feel like I'm going up in space.
Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. We have a woman here who's been making New Haven tick longer than some of us have been alive. Rosa DeLauro, she's seeking her 18th term in the U.S. Congress, representing New Haven in the U.S. Representative 3rd Congressional District. Rosa, thanks for coming on the air today. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you, Paul. We go back a very long time.
We do. I covered your first campaign. It was
indeed.
fun. That was an
Came
instant campaign.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Came up to the 3rd floor on Huntington Street, which was the campaign headquarters at the time. So remember it well.
And if you remember, if you could put the microphone a little closer to you, if it's okay.
Yeah.
But I remember, Rosa, you were well known already when you ran in 1990. You had been chief of staff for the mayor of New Haven. You had run Chris Dodd's office in the Senate. You were national fundraiser for women candidates, and you were making your move. And it was a very interesting campaign, 1990. You were running against Tom Scott, who sort of was a proto-Trump before we had Trump, that kind of right-wing thing.
You hit the nail on the head there. That is absolutely right. And you will recall it was an ugly campaign.
He went at you in a way that was, I think, a precursor to how these issues were discussed later, when the Republicans were going after the working class vote from Democrats that traditionally had that vote by claiming you didn't really represent them on issues like abortion and women's rights and things like that.
But the other thing is, he ran it, and it's very, very similar. Interesting in terms of politics. And I listened to Donald Trump and the way he disparages Vice President Harris. And it was very much of the same tone, if you will recall, Paul, that Tom Scott, attacked me. He attacked my family. Attacked my
your husband. I remember your husband.
But it was all about really demeaning women and not thinking that women, he defined me by my husband rather than define me as Rosa DeLauro, who had been engaged in political life of the city for a long time.
He would always say it was like a Homeric appellation, her pollster husband, Stanley Greenberg, and it said pollster in the sinister voice. I remember speaking to Stanley about it, like, what was the pollster thing? Why was that damning? And we wondered whether it was a Jewish thing. Like, Stanley Greenberg, he would emphasize the Greenberg.
Yeah.
But then, he eventually married a pollster.
I didn't know that.
Of Palestinian descent.
Oh, my gosh. Wow. Well, he kept making reference to me. He never characterized, and even in the newspapers, to be honest, the way he described me was Rosa DeLauro Greenberg.
Wow. And you didn't go by Greenberg.
No, I'm an only child. There was the last of the DeLauros here.
That's a good name in New Haven.
But, my
both your parents were
right. People at the first instance thought they were voting for my mother, which was not a bad thing. It was great.
So, Rosa, that was 34 years ago, 1990. You've now ascended to the top ranks of Democrats in Congress. You were the chair of the Appropriations Committee. Now you're the ranking member. You're off and on in the national media talking about how the party should address major issues. So 34 years later, why are you running for another term? Why do you want to be congressperson again?
Well, I think the issues that confront us today and the issues that I have really championed for my entire career, the issues that face families today, working families, middle-class families, vulnerable families, those are the issues that are front and center in our public discourse today. And I've said over and over again, and I have for years, the issues facing families today who live paycheck to paycheck, they are struggling. They're trying to put food on the table. They're trying to pay health care bills. They're trying to get their kids to school. The whole variety. People are often one $400 payment to somewhere at risk where they can't do it. And so for me, the culmination, because we are, I believe, on the cusp of looking at what we are going to do about child care, paid family and medical leave, a child tax credit, equal pay for equal work. All of these issues, which are front and center now as in our discourse today, are the issues that we're looking at for the future, and the issues that I'm so proud of, my Democratic Party, that these are flagship issues that we're facing
Lilly
today.
Ledbetter Act. You were close. Didn't you introduce that one for equal pay?
Yeah.
And you did the child tax credit more recently.
Right. Well, Lilly Ledbetter there were two pieces. Lilly Ledbetter just returned us to the status quo.
Which was
that
can't discriminate.
You cannot discriminate, and you could, no matter when you found out there was discrimination, you could make your case, file your case, which was Lilly's issue. She 25 years she worked for Goodyear. They weren't paying her the same amount of money that the gentleman next to her was making. They had the same position, and then the court ruled that you needed. That it had to go back 20 years, that she would have had to file earlier. That got us back. And then I introduced the Paycheck Fairness Act, which says, very simply, men, women in the same job deserve the same pay. And that is still, we passed it 4 times in the House. We lost in the Senate, where good legislation often goes to die. But nevertheless, it's on the agenda of our...
And during the pandemic, a bill you were pushing for many years got put into law for a year, which was the child tax credit. And now even some Republicans like J.D. Vance are supporting versions of it. Is that a key thing you're trying to also pass if you get it?
Yes, and let me go back to your original question. I've worked 20 years to make the child tax credit a reality. And it was the American Rescue Plan, where the president signed it into law. There hasn't been a federal program that has met its goals in the way that the child tax credit.
There was a lifting people out of poverty by giving tax credits for children.
The single biggest tax credit for middle-class families, working families, vulnerable families that we've seen in a generation. Lifted, almost half our kids out of poverty, lowered the hunger rate in the United States by 25%. And I will just tell you, when it was removed after, just a year, and quite frankly, Republicans didn't vote for the bill, even though they want to say they're for a child tax credit. They were not there. And we've seen the poverty rate go from 5.2% to 12.4%. We've seen hunger rise. We've seen middle-income families still in a
when they say they're
spot.
for it now, Vance says he's for the Vice President came from Republicans. Are they for what you're for when it comes to a child tax credit, or is it being portrayed differently in the fine print?
Well, I'm not sure, J.D. Vance, what he means by $5,000 for a child tax credit. Keep in mind that the legislation in the Senate, which was introduced by Senators Brown, Booker, Bennett, Warnock, others, he's not signed on to that bill, which is a child tax credit. So for me, they're empty words. There is no definition of what he wants to do. So I don't know.
It is kind of interesting. We started out
know.
talking about how the right was attacking you in 1990 for this kind of policy, saying you weren't traditional values, and now it's interesting to see the right, not the center Republican, but the right kind of embrace this proposal and try to claim it. So that's one thing that came around a different way.
That's right. No, and that's why I say, when you ask me the question about this is really a moment in time, and I believe that we are on the cusp with the election of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Tim Walz has implemented a child tax credit in Minnesota. Kamala Harris has said that it is the top of her economic agenda. It is the flagship issue of the Democratic Party. My colleague Hakeem Jeffries, the next Speaker of the House, visited here, and when he spoke, he talked about it's the number one priority for the Democrats, and that puts money in people's pockets.
So in terms of you running again, the question of why, if this is a moment in time where the future of how we deal with families in crisis or families in need in this country is at stake, what do you feel you bring to the table by being elected in terms of fighting for issues over a long time? Because some people say if you've been a long time, you're the problem. Other people say it takes a long time to get things accomplished, and being in there, you can get it over the line. How do you see that? Why do you want to be there yourself to play that role?
Because we can get it over the line. And I have fought, if you go back to equal pay for equal work, it is 1997. Paid sick days goes back to Senator Kennedy and myself in the late 1990s. Also, family and medical leave. Well, first of all, I worked on family and medical leave with Senator Dodd when I was his chief of staff. We always knew it needed to be paid, but we didn't have the votes at that time. And so now this is what we're pushing. Kamala Harris has talked about paid family and medical leave, which is high on her agenda. So the issue is why? Because, things do not happen overnight. Congress has changed. The environment changed. The people change who are there. Just a decade ago, we were thought about being the crazy ants in the attic. And now all of these issues, which you have recounted and I have just mentioned, are at center of our public discourse. That's why I want to be there, because we're going to make them happen.
And how do you make them happen over time? Do you need to get to know an institution, how things pass, develop relationships, find out why they didn't pass the first time, what it takes to get them over, build public support? What is it about experience that enables people to get an issue over the line?
Well, all the things that you mentioned. My mom taught me many things. Two things is never give up and don't take no for an answer. And those have been principles for me. And I don't give up and I don't take no for an answer. And so for 20 years, a child tax credit. And we had it, they took it away, and now we're moving, and I'm moving to make it permanent. That's why. And you have to seize that moment, and this is the moment to make that happen.
Rosa DeLauro has been seizing the moment for 17 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives, running for the 18th, and is here talking to us about the campaign on Dateline New Haven and WNHH-FM. Rosa, when you look back at campaigns, so you were right in the thick of electing Frank Logue as the mayor of New Haven in 1975 in a Reform Democratic campaign. You yourself started running in 1990 when things are much different. How has campaigning changed in terms of how do you build support? How do you win an election? How do you get your message out?
Mm-hmm. Well, they're the same principles, is that you need to, the technology may be different in the way that you access groups and organizations, but it's a very similar process in the sense that you have to engage with the public, and they have to know who you are, what you are about, and it is also the multiple contacts with people. As I say, things are so much different. Look, I can remember using in Chris Dodd's elections where we had, the voting sheets for every town, in paper, 169 towns, and the voting sheets, all that. Now that it's also computerized and digitized and whatever it is, the way you reach people now is not what you were doing in the past. You do it with digital ads. You're doing it with what they now do with postcarding. You deal with... Okay,
so those are just different technologies, similar ideas. You do the outreach. Now, you used to have to spend a lot more time thinking about what media is going to write about you, like newspapers, news organizations, and you still care about that. You have a great staff. You put out the releases.
Sure.
We love, we appreciate it. But you also become much more your own media outlet than it used to be for candidates.
But social media is
You're
really
generating a lot of your own.
Right. Yes, and I have to tell you, you've got young people around you who are on staff or campaigns. I mean, they're quick, they're attuned, they know.
Well, the funnest moment so far of this campaign has been the Rizzler. So you put out a video where your Gen Z staffers had you walk around Congress, very well shot, by the way, walking around Congress, speaking the language they fed you of terms that none of us understand. And how did that come about? That was fun.
Well, no, the staff, they're very creative and wonderful. They came to me and they said, would you be willing to do something like this? And I said, sure.
And what was the thought? You want to encourage younger people to vote?
Getting other people, younger people to think about politics. I mean, I think younger people, many have tuned out of the political process, and they don't make a connection between themselves and not just politics, but what happens in the Congress directly affects their lives, and to really try to make that connection with them.
But you were a good sport. I mean, you were going around there saying, "I'm the Rizzler," all these kind of phrases.
That's right.
I learned that word, so that's from charisma, I guess, because we have a Gen Z person who broke it down for us and wrote an article about what all the terms meant.
So I have a Gen Z person who broke it down for me too.
So Rizzler means you have charisma, and you're kind of at the center of things.
That's right. And the money bags are where the appropriations, the money bags, and and that's where you move the money, is for the appropriations.
And also the electorate, how have they evolved over time? Do people pay as much time to issues? Do they have to be reached different ways? Are they more cynical, less time to party?
Well, listen, I think people are more cynical today, and I think about that's why in terms of message, I've always believed, and I learned this from my folks, is that you need to start from where people are. You need to walk in their shoes. That's something that my dad taught me very, very early on. And I think for a long time now, families, working families, middle-class families, haven't viewed that their interests, their struggle as at the center of what our politics is about today. And I think that they're skeptical about it and cynical about it. So that means that, it's a bigger task of trying to, first of all, I think you do have to understand where people are and what their economic struggle is today. I mentioned that earlier. People are living paycheck to paycheck. That's not a campaign slogan or anything, but it's a reality. And if you do not understand that they're having difficulty and trying to pay their bills, then you've lost them. And
this is conception that the Republican Party's promoting, that the economy was better under Republican president until the COVID hit, and then inflation came up partly because of the Inflation Reduction Act. How do you, I know you count that by being Lena Khan, the head of the Federal Trade Commission, talk about price gouging.
Yes.
You also, I'm seeing a parallel in 1992 when Bill Clinton ran against George Bush, the first one on the economy, and they said it's all about the economy. And in fact, all these economic indicators are improving. And by the time election was coming, unemployment was going down, GDP was going up, all that kind of stuff. But it didn't really, people didn't feel it. Right. So right now you've had several months where economic news has been good according to traditional indicators. Food is still 25% higher than it was 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. How do you navigate that? How do you set a message that maybe you do agree with some of the economics you move, but people still aren't feeling it? How do you run in that environment?
Well, you do as I say. You don't tell people how wonderful it is. For them, it's not wonderful. Life is not wonderful. Their economic situation is very difficult. And so I think you have to acknowledge that so that they understand that you understand what they're dealing with.
Then you have to engage the issue of whose reason. What's the reason?
But that's right. But then, you have to talk to them about what you're trying to do and then what the future is about. You don't go back to the past, you go to the future. I want a child tax credit. Let's go forward with a child tax credit. Let's deal with paid family and medical leave so that when you get sick, or your kid gets sick, someone in your family gets sick, and you can't work, that in fact you're not choosing between your job and your loved one, but there is an avenue for you to be able to have to get being paid during that time, in order to be taking care of your financial needs. Child care, that making it affordable, accessible for people. We found out in the pandemic, women were pushed out of the workforce. They didn't opt out. They were pushed out, and they went home, and they had to take care of their kids. They had no income paid family and medical leave. They couldn't get child care because they couldn't afford to get child care. You then have a child tax credit which gives you the funds to be able to get childcare so that you can go to work. These pieces are all connected. And that's what you have to let people know about, is what you are trying to do on their behalf to make housing more affordable.
And how do we do
for
that?
them. Well, with legislation that we're dealing with, we were close. We had a child tax credit that worked.
No, I mean housing costs.
Well, housing, look at evictions and who gets evicted. It's usually households headed up by women who have young kids. Give them the opportunity to be able to, in many instances, fight eviction. Have the legal
Public defender.
support that they need. I have legislation that would provide legal assistance in the same way that the industry has. I am responsible in the appropriations process for $1 billion more in child care in the last budget. And, we fought for that. It didn't happen.
That's one thing I've always been wondering. So we read a lot about you in between elections from people who follow Congress closely.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're all the time in Punch Bowl, the 19th, the New York Times. And one thing we read a lot about you is how while you take a strong stand on issues where you want the Congress to go, you're also in the room with Republicans and Democrats when they're making the budget as the ranking Democratic member. How do you communicate that in a environment where people want to see you just as a fighter, which you definitely fight for things, but how they come to appreciate the need for compromise and trying to actually produce legislation? Like there's a whole industry now, people like Matt Gaetz and Margie Taylor Greene, where they actually get the public attention and their career advances because they don't get involved in compromising. They get rid of their own Speaker of the House for actually passing any legislation. What's the antidote to that?
Well,
The anti-institutionalism of
but no, if in any legislative body, look, you can go to the Board of Alders, you can go to the General Assembly, you go to the Congress. Look, you fight for as long and hard as you can, but you try to come at the end to some compromise. I've had real experience of doing that. I passed appropriations bills with Senator Shelby of Alabama, strong, conservative Republican, with Kay Granger of Texas. I've negotiated the Labor, Health, Education, Human Services bill with the current chair of appropriations, Tom Cole, Republican from Oklahoma. Tom Cole and I get along. We know he and I are on the same page with Title I, with TRIO, with special education and others. There are places where we differ. But the differences don't lead you to the extreme poles of saying never. You can't do that in a legislative body. If that's where you come at this, then it's time for you to find another job.
And I remember when Donald Trump was president, you were active in negotiations with Robert Lighthizer, his trade representative. I think is going to be pretty important on these issues too if Trump gets reelected. And I remember you had success in finding common ground on renegotiating trade treaties.
Right.
How's that going to shake out? Like, are you in favor of increasing the tariffs, on re-examining trade treaties? I mean, there's kind of a divide in each party on that.
Well, look, and I did work very closely with Bob Lighthizer and several of my other colleagues. Speaker Pelosi appointed myself and 6 others to be part of the negotiating team on the
Renegotiating NAFTA, right?
renegotiation of the NAFTA agreement. We made real strides in that effort, particularly with, the SOPs that were going to the pharmaceutical companies, with a rapid response mechanism for adjudicating trade cases. And just a quick anecdote. No one believed, because I hadn't voted for trade agreements in the past, that I would vote for the trade agreement. And I did vote for that because we had negotiated. We got some things that we won that were very, very important. Did we get everything we wanted? No, but we moved forward. So now, and most recently I had Bob Lighthizer at my house for a public policy dinner
Do you still do
with all
those?
Democrats.
You used to
Yes,
do
I
Saturday.
still do them.
You used to do Saturday night dinners in Washington where you invite
Wednesday.
people,
They're usually Tuesday or Wednesday nights.
and people come on different sides of an issue to talk about a major issue before Congress.
Oh
right?
well, no, it is. Well, there are differences of opinion, but it is for Democrats.
Oh, okay.
I do it for Democrats, and people do come on different sides of the issue there. But we have someone who can,
Help you understand it.
help us understand it. A new a book.
How
that
often do you
comes
do
out.
those?
I still do them. I think I did one. The last one I did was just before we left, and I had the woman who was really fabulous, Arlie Hochschild, who wrote "Strangers in Their Own Land," who has a new book that's out, and she came to talk about her book, and it's a very lively conversation. But my point is that you have to be willing to not get every single thing that you want.
I don't know. You just say win half of it and claim victory.
But
That's a different day.
That's a different day. You don't compromise your principles. You can't do that in the process. And I believe, because your question was about, I think we are, and I still head up the trade working group in the House, and we're looking at various pieces of legislation that we are supporting. For me personally, I think I think targeted tariffs are something that we consider.
So that's the Kamala Harris position, which is that we should have some tariff increase,
Right.
especially about national security minded stuff,
Right.
but not the full tariffs they thought will raise the
he's talking
prices.
about it across the
Yeah.
board, which is going to raise prices significantly. We should not do that. But I am for, which I fight for, is worker-centered trade agreements. In the past, our trade agreements offshored, outsourced American jobs. We cannot do that. We have to make sure that American workers are protected in our trade.
And how do you do
agreements.
that?
Well, again, you put in place the guardrails and restrictions, like I said, with with what we tried to
Renegotiating NAFTA.
do. The renegotiating NAFTA. We dealt with environmental issues there, stringent environmental issues, which we won on with the pharmaceutical companies who wanted carte blanche, and that did not happen. Or what I said is a rapid response mechanism that says you cannot delay or adjudicating a trade to and we won that in this effort, and we just won a case with regard to Goodyear Tire Company, who was in
Goodyear
Mexico. Goodyear again. You're right. Thank you.
We're talking to Rosa DeLauro, U.S. Representative from the 3rd Congressional District, which includes New Haven, the city of her birth. We should let people know, we keep referring to her parents. Ted DeLauro, her father, was a Democratic Party leader in Wooster Square in the middle of the 20th century, and her mother, Louisa, who lived over 100 years old, was a leading alder from Wooster Square for decades.
Yes, thank you for mentioning both of them. My dad served on the Board of Alders.
Oh, he
as
did
well.
too. He was also ward chair or something.
He was a leader in the community.
Just I remember when I read the
leader.
books about urban renewal, and they went to him when they wanted to figure out how
That's
to
right,
convince
because-
people to upgrade their houses on Court Street and take public money to
Exactly.
preserve stuff.
He
Yeah.
worked for the New Haven Redevelopment Agency.
Okay.
But he was the liaison with the community and the agency. And
And they went to people's
door-to-door,
houses, door to door, where they found they had money under their mattresses and plans for their houses,
Well,
and tried to have them cooperate.
And they did. If you see, Worcester Square is really just a beautiful neighborhood. And New Haven is a city of neighborhoods, as you know. Dixwell.
Well, I think what
Newhall,
actually
et
he worked
cetera.
on specifically, if I'm not mistaken, was some of these beautiful old houses when too much stuff was getting torn down in the city, and they're
That's
trying to
right.
convince people to take some public money to preserve older buildings. So when you go around the square and the Green Street and the other streets
You'll
right off
see.
of Court Street,
That's
you really get those lovely historic houses, which now, of course, are quite valuable because
Right.
people want to live in things like that.
But he did serve, as I said, but he only served 2 terms. The reason being, that was not a paying job. It's a volunteer job. and he had a daughter that was going to go to college and go to school.
And your mother's working at a factory, right?
Yeah, and so he had to give it up because he had to have, the economic means to make sure that I could go to school. And my mom did not run in his stead.
Oh.
She ran in her own right. He represented the ward changes of so many years. 10th Ward. She ran from the 8th Ward.
Yeah.
Worcester Square.
What's that place?
Yeah.
And so today is October 7th. It's a year after terrorist attacks that changed the world in Israel, Hamas invading southern Israel, massacring people. And since then, Israel has unleashed just torrent nonstop, leveling of cities, and we now have a multi-front war. And that's been tough for everyone in public life to navigate. And I noticed you had a statement out today where I was noticed how you folks are really trying to listen to everybody. You talked about the loss of life and the horrors of that massacre, and how you're going to support Israel to defend itself. And you and Chris Murphy and others today are mentioning trying to keep also in the public mind the fate of Palestinians. 40,000 and others have lost their lives, and that the hope for a two-state solution has been fading. You're keeping that alive. How are you navigating that? I mean, there are people outside your door who march. We charge you with genocide on one side. On the other side, the Republican Party is trying to take Jewish votes, not successfully, away from the Democratic Party by saying you're not slavishly endorsing everything the right-wing government Israel wants to do. Given your deep ties in the community, in all parts of the community, how do you navigate a moment like this?
Well, it's not easy, but October 7th, what was, as I said, devastating terrorist attack, the worst attack since the Holocaust. And I've met over and over again with families of hostages, who are, the grief is incalculable, and what they're facing. And as I said, I did have a chance earlier this year to visit Israel, and went to the Kibbutz Beret. And I went to the site of the music festival, which was extraordinary. And and I believe that Israel needs to be able to support and defend itself. But I'm also, and now it's true with the missile strikes from Iran, and that is something that, and I'm proud that the U.S. worked with Israel on this attack, as they did with the prior one, along with the Jordanians, etc. But I also think that we can't lose sight of our values in terms of the loss of Palestinian lives, and that what we need to strive for is and the humanitarian aid. And I think Hamas is a terrorist organization, and I condemn it. And I believe if you cannot condemn Hamas, there is no basis for a conversation with what happened. But all Palestinians are not Hamas, and we need to be cognizant of the devastation.
See, I believe that Benjamin Netanyahu is putting you guys in a squeeze. I think he's trying to get Donald Trump reelected, and trying to use the fact that Democrats don't want to and can't afford to, but also don't want to turn an eye to massacres of Jews and attacks on Israel, to then endorse policies that Democrats don't support in any way. When he's dropped the two-state solution, the West Bank, they're doing their own pogroms, and it's kind of a parlor game, I think, a political game with a lot of real-life consequences up until this election of how much bombing can he do before the pressure's too great on Democrats to take some action to rein it in.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you're looking at Israelis who are demonstrating and protesting as well. And I would say it succinctly that I support Israel. I stand with Israel. I do not support Benjamin Netanyahu. And I think all our future actions, and I think we need to stay true to the course, because I think it's the only way for peace in the region is a two-state solution. And I think we need to foster that in every way that we can. And at the same time, and it is threading a needle, is to stand with our ally and to stand in strong support of of Israel.
I was saying here, boy, October 7th, who knew the world was going to be like this a year later? I'm hoping next October 7th.
Right.
Because I don't think that pessimism is more rational than optimism. When things look bleak and you don't understand how you're going to get your way through it, you've dealt with so many issues over the years. But it's not accurate that the worst scenario always plays out. Sometimes people do find ways to peace. Northern Ireland found their way
That's
to peace.
right.
And I'm just wondering what it's going to take
Yeah.
for Hamas and the Israeli government and to find their way to peace and stop killing.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, Hamas is a terrorist organization. I believe they can have no role in the future of the area, of the region. And, but and I think when I was there, which is several months ago, I was there last February, there was the trauma of Israelis, that the loss of life, but that loss of security, sense of security was palpable. And I still think that that's the case.
And I saw you at the convention, which was...
And on the other side of that, I just might say, is that with regard, I say this about Palestinians, the Palestinian people, they despair. They don't see any hope for themselves. And it's how one finds a way to be able to...
At the convention, it was interesting to me. I saw you there in Chicago, and it was really a great convention. There was a lot of spirit, a lot of optimism. There were the uncommitted delegates wearing the keffiyehs in the hall and wanting to be... to get a chance to speak, and they protested. And I had a conversation with a few of them who were older. They were more my age, some Palestinians who were there as delegates from the South. They were much more upbeat about the convention. They said to me they felt it was very important that Kamala Harris win in terms of prospects for peace in the Middle East compared to what Trump is. And they felt that showing up at the caucuses they had at the election, this is what you heard mostly, but what I heard from these people was very interesting. He felt that showing up at the caucuses, just like when you talk about the long range project of getting a child tax credit or equal pay, they felt that that was really the way to do it. And they felt they were heard in the caucuses, which was interesting to me. And they felt that you could work within to change minds over time for peace. Mm-hmm. To lips to God's ears.
Yes, yeah, which is what we need to strive for.
And another big date in people's minds with this election was January 6th of 2021. I spoke to you that night when Donald Trump unleashed a mob to try to have an insurrection to stop the process of certifying the winner. And they were trying to kill people, and you were in the room. You were lying down on the floor. When you think back on that, how does that tie into this election you're running now, and what's at stake?
Yeah, well, I vivid recollections of that day. The United States has had a history of the peaceful transition. The United States has had the peaceful transition of power. I go back to Al Gore. Casting
the vote for his own loss. Yeah.
I listened to him that night with tears in my eyes, but he said, the words have been spoken, and I accept.
Richard Nixon did it too, and there were some credible stories of cheating in the 60s. Yeah.
So that's been our history. And I believe that Donald Trump and others want to eradicate that history.
Did you think that night that you might not make it out alive from Congress?
No, I didn't. I'm being very honest with you. I knew I was in a very dangerous situation because I heard the gunshots.
You were lying on the ground. No, that's not a joke.
Well, no, we were lying on the cement at the gallery where they told us we had to evacuate. I think I told you this. They first said to us, grab your gas masks. And we looked at it. I never knew there were gas masks under the seats in the house. And I didn't even know how the heck to deal with a gas mask. Long and the short of it, they said, just grab it and go. We've got to get you out of here. And I watched members of Congress, and there was a very young press corps, particularly young women in the press corps. Really, we grabbed one another to move around to the in the gallery because it's not a smooth turn. You have to go under railings and over, etc. And then we heard the shots, and they said hit the floor. And I also seen the glass door of the chamber leading from the rotunda had been broken through, and you could see hands of the insurrectionists of the mob coming through, and the doors were barricaded with Capitol Police with guns. And when we hit the floor, this is honest to God's truth. People may not believe this. I had very little juice left in my phone. And I played with the idea of whether or not I would call Stan.
Your husband?
My husband. And because it was reminiscent of September 11th, where people made the last of their phone calls. And I said, but I did call him. I just called him to tell him that I'm all right. Tell the kids I'm all right. They're going to get us out of here.
And you felt that way. You really didn't think you were going to die.
I didn't think I was going to die.
Because I have to tell you that what I kept hearing those first few hours is, how is Rosa? Like in New Haven, the first question a lot of people said here was, how is Rosa?
It was, and when they did get us out, and there was clamoring banging at the doors where the First Lady usually comes in for the State of the Union. We had a wonderful member, Jason Crow, was a former Ranger, and he kind of took charge, and he said to us, stay down. And we have a congressional pin. I never wear the congressional pin, but others do. He said, remove the congressional pin so that you're not recognizable. And when there was this clamoring at the door, he just said, wait, we don't know who is outside of this door. Because we all rushed to get to the door to go out. And when we did finally get out, the mob was lying spread eagle on the floor with Capitol Police with guns over them. And then they quickly grabbed us and got us down the stairs through the tunnels and got us out.
So 4 years later, you're still standing. You're still in Congress.
Yeah.
What are we going to see next January 6th? I mean, what's going to happen?
Well, my hope is that we will not, see that. We are a democracy.
But I mean,
fragile.
the vice presidential candidate has now said he would never act the same way on the Republican ticket. Local officials have been elected with Steve Adams urging to try to subvert results in swing states like Georgia.
Yeah.
How concerned are you?
I'm concerned. I'm very, very concerned. Look, you have the Speaker of the House of Representatives who was an election denier. And if you see all the interviews this weekend, no one of the Republicans can say that Donald Trump lost the election.
So what do you take from what needs to be done?
Well, that is, we have to be prepared. We have to be ready. And we have to call on the better angels, if you will, of the country to understand that this is not the United States, that we are a democracy.
So the issue doesn't seem that salient to swing voters. I could be wrong. The polling, you would know better than I would, Rosa. There's sort of this amnesia. I don't think people even remember that Donald Trump was almost assassinated. I mean, the short-term memory is pretty central to how politics seems to be working now.
I think we're much more alert and much more sensitized to the violence that exists in our communities, and I believe that has made us all more conscious and being prepared to deal.
We have a comment from a listener. Thanks for listening. You listen to U.S. Rep. Rosa DeLauro on Dateline New Haven, saying that we have to get rid of career politicians and asking if there will be a debate with you and your opponent, Michael Massey, the Republican.
Well, look, I'm running my campaign. I'm going to, meetings and talking to people, and I'm out with the public every single day. I think I'm in enough interviews. People know where I stand on the issues. And I think both my colleague and I were interviewed just a few days ago and so forth. And
what is the importance of debates? Because we're seeing fewer of them. You did debate in the past with long shot candidates. What's the reason now you think we're seeing fewer of them?
Well, because I think that people don't see them as relevant as they have been in the past, and that may be the case. But I think it's not so much the debate, but what you have done, how people view you, what you have done for the people who put their trust in you. What are the kinds of issues that you take on behalf of your constituents and the families in your district? What is it that motivates what you are doing? And again, both in terms of your votes and the issues that you take up and who you stand with. And there are many, many other ways in which that gets demonstrated rather than a program structured, 45 minutes or whatever it is, with a debate. For me, I spend most of my time gathered with, people in this community. I've never shied away from whether it is for or against or so forth. I'm always willing to listen, to take on the issues that come up. And I think I've been pretty straightforward about where I stand, on the issues. And I think that if I might just go back in section, because it's the brand of politics, Paul, that I learned from Ted and Louisa DeLauro. They did not write omnibus legislation. What they did was to try to make government work for people. That, for me, is the hallmark of what I do, trying to make government work for people. That is what a child tax credit is about. That is what paid family and medical leave is about. That is what constituent services are about. And I would challenge anyone to say that any office does a better job at constituent services than our office. That is what equal pay for equal work is. It is about what are the ways in which I try to make government work for people, and how do I try to help make a difference in their lives. And because I believe that that is fundamentally what the strength of the Congress is all about.
So another big issue this year nationally is abortion. How important is that in Connecticut in this race? Or is it more about having majorities that might pass a bill that would codify Roe versus Wade?
Well, I think the abortion issue, while it isn't challenged in the way in Connecticut is the way it is in many other states, is I believe that, again, that is something that we have to pay a great deal of attention to. And I believe in a woman's right to choose. I support the Women's Health, Protection Act, which would codify Roe, that means would make it a law of the land. Kamala Harris said that she would do that. I think it is a big issue in this election. When you think about it, I've introduced legislation for in vitro fertilization to make that available to individuals. But it's not just overturning Roe with the Dobbs case, but it is about trying to eliminate the avenues for contraception and now even challenging in vitro fertilization. Every single way in which to demean women, not trust women.
Arrest women for going to other states, right?
Going to other states, arresting physicians, etc. Now,
do you think in states like Florida, the referendums on abortion will help the Democrats?
Yes, I do.
Do you have any kind of, in Texas or Florida, or
I
hopes
think,
for an upset? Even where's it, Nebraska, with the independent who's running for Senate, who's coming close? Yeah.
I think in every state, where I think the abortion issue is on the ballot everywhere, and I think women in this country are not going back. They're not going.
What would be your advice for Kamala Harris? I remember 2016, all the polls showed that Hillary Clinton was going to win. I think it was the New York Times had a needle with a compilation of poll every minute getting adjusted. And up until 8 o'clock when the polls closed, the needle showed her with a 99% chance of winning. Mm-hmm. You gathered people at the Schubert for your victory party, and we live streamed it for your reelection. Mm-hmm. And there were because you guys had the party, you weren't watching the needle. So while your event was going on for 40 minutes, that needle, which had stayed at 99% for weeks, because everyone was nervously watching, refreshing their phones every 5 minutes to see where the needle was moving. Within the 40 minutes of your event, the needle went from 99 to 33. Every minute it was dropping, and people were having heart attacks, but it hadn't registered. So you gave a speech about how Hillary was going to win. Mm-hmm. How shocked were you about what happened, and what do you take from that now if you were to give any advice mm-hmm. to Kamala Harris's team for how to win this election?
Well, I think they're very focused on this being an underdog, and they're also focused on that this is a very close election. So close. And I think that, but what I think is that she has demonstrated above all, and I think she can continue this, that the biggest issue is cost of living. And what she's done, I think she is providing, and I think it's palpable, that folks are seeing, that cost of living issue, the American dream, working families, middle-class families now believing that they have someone who cares about them and their families. And if her economic agenda, which has been very clearly laid out, is to what she's about and who she's for and who she stands with, including child tax credit, paid family and medical leave, increased opportunity for housing units, and going after the price gougers and the big corporations who are hand over fist making money and putting it to working people and to middle-class families.
Rosa DeLauro, thank you so much for coming in. I always love when you visit. Although I have to admit, my favorite thing is when you show up at a press conference, because you are always the most energetic person there. You make it fun. I mean, you always got something important to say, but you really have a great spirit you bring to public life, and it's fun to have you here.
Thanks so much, Paul. I love you. We go back a long way.
If you win, if Democrats regain control of the House, which is a definite possibility, are you up for another term as
I am
chair
going
of
to
the
be
House
chair of
Appropriations?
Chair of Appropriations, where you can move money.
You'd be the Rizzler.
I'll be the appropriations the money bags, you know.
That's how things happen.
That's how
I
things
learned that from
happen.
your video.
Right.
Okay. And thanks for coming, Rosa DeLauro. Thanks for the team for bringing her in. Thanks to Doreen Chernecki for a great job working the controls and putting us in more platforms in the cyberspace than I even knew existed. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Feel to Be Free from the group CD A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.